We've got somebody this morning, political analyst, former Navy veteran, a defense policy analyst, former Bush appointee, Don Bramer is with us. Don, welcome to you and good morning.
Good morning. How are you folks down there?
Doing well. Good to have you here. I'd like to hear your opinion on what I just articulated, the fact that we do have a president in disagreement at some level with the majority leaders of the Republican Party, that being Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader, and Speaker Paul Ryan, in regards to the issuance and the debating of tariffs on steel and aluminum.
Well, I think, I agree with your point, and I was listening to you before I came on. We have a president here that, as you said, through his entire campaign, he campaigned on behalf of the American worker. And if you look at the states in the middle of the country and in our Rust Belt states, those are the people that have become his base. So they don't look at and buy into this whole global market thing. They're looking at their community and what's around them and the jobs that are lost. So he's going to keep that base. Where the party is kind of separating from is these are some of the same folks that negotiated these bad deals. Now, if you want to look at tariffs, I would suggest that let's not have a blanket tariff that's this rate for steel and this rate for aluminum that affects every country, but do something a little more surgical. Let's not go after our allies in the UK or the small countries of Sweden and Norway, but let's look at something like China. China, who has not only had their trade and their steel and their other products, raw products, have a dire effect on our economy, but even to the fact that the products they send to other countries and then send to the United States so that it makes their tax laws not seem as bad. That's the countries I think we need to go after. So I don't disagree with the tariffs. I just disagree with his approach on them.
Now, let me ask you a question. I read Paul Ryan's comments yesterday in the Wall Street Journal when he says, not as broad as Trump wants to do. I'm not in direct disagreement philosophically with what he's talking about, but I want to be more surgical. You've got an element within the country that when they hear Washington or the nation's capital say things like, we've got to nip around the edges, we got to be more surgical, we got to be more thoughtful. There's a recoiling in Main Street America amongst regular folk who believes that is dog whistle for we're not going to do anything. And I believe the reason Trump was entrusted with the responsibility of American presidency is because we didn't believe he'd nip around the edges. He would do very radical things in a city and place that's not accustomed recently to radical sorts of policies or actions. What is your comment there?
Well, I agree with you. That's why he was elected. He came forward as everything he said he was going to do is be a voice. Why we see the ebbs and flows of the polls and here in Congress is neither side knows what he's going to do. We've not, and anyone that's studied political science, and I have so for years, it's not a creature, this is not a creature who plays by the rules because he makes them in what he thinks is right, in his opinion, for the worker and the American of every day. And so their long-term strategy doesn't work anymore. And now they have to look at, okay, let's rethink how we're going to do this. And I think it's a good shakeup. You're not always going to agree with everything he does, but if you look at the polls, there's a lot of different polls out there that say that they approve or disapprove. When you really break it down into the polls of like what he says but don't like what he does, that really makes the numbers a lot different. A lot of people approve of the action he's taking, even though they don't approve of the way he gets his message across, and that's on both sides of the aisle.
I find it very interesting when I saw your resume, a former Bush appointee. This was the party of the Bush family for a long time. I think the Bush family served America very, very well. Is the party belong to Trump now? I mean, do you think the GOP is the party of Donald Trump, or is there still kind of a civil war within, trying to find its true direction and meaning? I mean, is it the party of intellectual conservatism, or is it the party of a version of American populism that has reared its head? I mean, I find that very curious and interesting when I look at you being a Bush appointee and the traditional Republican Party, and it kind of being in this, I don't know, place of consternate, not really sure exactly where it goes from here. How do you see that playing itself out?
Well, I think, and I grew up from a very Southern Democrat family. So I certainly believe that our politics in this country evolves. I think if you look at our two-party system right now, it's really a four-party system. We've got two factions in the Democrats, one extreme left, extreme socialism base, and one kind of leaning more to the center. And then you go to the Republicans, and you're seeing the same thing. There's a divisive set there. I think, and that's why a lot of the American people are as fed up and disgusted with the political system. They don't see that there's anything that represents them. They don't know. It was easy before. You had, for years we were taught growing up that the Democrat was the party of the working people. And they saw that go away in the last 8 years, and so now all of a sudden they're looking for a place to call home. And that's why I think we're seeing this populist movement that people jumped onto the Trump. He became the nominee and the president, going against every strategist and every poll that we saw.
Don, you've been very helpful. We appreciate your time this morning. Hope you'll join us again when we have issues like this to discuss.
I look forward to it. You guys have a wonderful day.
You do the same. Don Bramer, who was a former Bush appointee, political analyst, former Navy veteran, and defense policy expert and analyst. We'll take a break. We'll be back after the break once again. Thanks to McCall Farms. Good morning, PD, 595.